You're the holy people. You are the chosen people, and you need to act like royalty. Would you just let a gem out into the street without covering it? You're like a gem, so you should cover yourself. And I thought this was so helpful to give us this instruction on how to serve God and like how to protect my brother, my father, and the other men from like this really tempting thing, which was young girls' bodies.
Did you know that you didn't want to be with a man, but you also knew that you had to be because that's what is required from your community?
At 19, I had a secret girlfriend, a full-on girlfriend that no one knew about. She would sneak into my bedroom at night. My body knew it was her. My brain was completely not connected to that at all. Simultaneously, like to falling in love and being in this relationship with a girl, I'm going on arranged dates with this man. Then I was like, I'm going to go through with it. This is a sacrifice that's required of me. I was like 6 months postpartum when I got pregnant with her. But I just loved this little girl and I started to have nightmares. If I couldn't do it for me, I was going to do something for her. I didn't want her to grow up thinking this kind of family was normal. I didn't even think I could leave the community. That wasn't an option, or my religion.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Yasmine Mohammed podcast. Today, my guest is Sara. Sara is a therapist, writer, and speaker who helps members of the queer community and individuals who have survived trauma to live bold, honest, and proud lives. She also serves as a clinical supervisor for Jewish Queer Youth, a nonprofit organization that supports and empowers LGBTQ youth. She is the author of a personal memoir called Kissing Girls on Shabbat. It recounts her courageous journey of self-acceptance as a queer woman, navigating life within and beyond the constraints of a Hasidic Jewish community. Welcome, Sara. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I have your book here, and I just think that we can relate on so many topics, and I would love to get into it and get gritty. You can ask me anything, like let's do it.
Okay, good. Well, I'm really glad to hear you say that because your story, there's a lot of grit in there. So there's a lot to talk about, but with you being a trauma-informed therapist, I know that you've got the strength and the resilience to get into these really difficult conversations. As you mentioned, you and I have been through very similar experiences in that we're both had to find our authentic selves after being kind of buried under living in a very religious community that forced us to act a certain way and to be a certain way, even though it was, betraying who we authentically were. But of course, for you, that's on a whole other level. Um, the, I really am just amazed, in awe, and very curious about just being young Sara, growing up in this community. Maybe you knew you were a lesbian, maybe you didn't, but what was it like just being a girl, being brought up in this extremely sexist group? Um, just give us some anecdotes about what it was like growing up in this community as a girl.
Oh, absolutely. So I was raised in Hasidic Brooklyn, which really looks like 18th century Europe, like the
Mhm.
men in the big fur hats and the long black coats, women in married women in wigs and long dresses, stockings covering their legs. And I was raised in a community where everyone looked exactly the same. So, like, all of the families were copy paste. The men wore the same outfit, the women wore basically the same outfit, and the children were raised to attend gender segregated schools. So, I went to an all girls school, and my brother went to a school a few blocks away. But we didn't even like walk down that block when the boys were on the block or getting out of school. We were supposed to stay completely separate. I didn't really mind that because I never really wanted to see the boys. I
Yeah.
didn't I get, but I was like, this is cool. I get to just hang out with the girls. We did have so many rules. And at the time, it was presented to us as this, like, you're the holy people, you are the chosen people, and you need to act like royalty. Royalty was then defined as this specific set of like, don't speak too loudly in public. Don't assert your opinion too loudly at the table. you have to wear this certain clothing that covers your whole body. And it was presented as like, would you just let a gem out into the street without covering it? This is what you do to you. You're like a gem, so you should cover yourself. I also was taught, like when I was 15, I went to this all-girls high school, and this rabbi had just published a book on like the specific rules of what women should wear. This is like a thick English book meant for teenage girls. And so there was a chapter on skirts, like your skirt should be 4 inches below the bottom of your kneecap, with little tips. How do you measure the bottom of your kneecap? I figured out it was like 7 of my fingers put together were 4 inches, and they were like, place this exactly on the bottom of your kneecap. Your skirt needs to fall below there. Don't wear stockings that are too thin because then it can look like your leg. So they have to be certain amount of thickness, like a certain thread count of stocking. And the rabbi came to my school of all girls. So like 400 girls were sitting there, and he was advising us as to the content in his book. And we got to ask questions. What about heels? Can they be 2 inches? What about 2.5? Block heels are preferable. You have to wear a heel, not a stiletto. And I thought this was so helpful at the time. I was like, that's so nice. He was from England. He came all the way to New York to give us this instruction on how to serve God and like how to protect my brother, my father, and the other men from like this really tempting thing, which was young girls' bodies. And I say that in this way so that, like, just to clarify that this went so deep that even as all these things were happening, I thought they weren't just normal, but they were wonderful. Like it was a privilege. And then part of that whole thing, being raised as a girl in that culture, is getting married off at a very young age. And so that's what happened to me at 19. I was set up on a date with a man. I met him a couple of times, 6 times, and then got engaged to be married. It was a little more complicated in my case, as you know. So go.
Yeah, this is what I want to know. So you're 19 at this point, going on dates with this guy. Do you know that you don't want to be with a man? Like, are you full of, so you're indoctrinated, you're fully immersed, you're complete, like, like you're a believer as you described it. You thought this was wonderful, but was there some sort of internal torture happening in there somewhere hidden that you were maybe trying to silence? Like, did you know that you didn't want to be with a man, but you also knew that you had to be because that's what is required from your community? Like, can you bring us back to 19-year-old Sarah, and what were you thinking at that time when you were dating this guy in preparation to marry him?
It's such an interesting question because, like, as a trauma therapist now, I think, what does it mean to know?
Hmm.
Right. And so at that time, at 19, I had a secret girlfriend. That's like the first couple of chapters of Kissing Girls on Shabbat. A full-on girlfriend that no one knew about. She would sneak into my bedroom at night, and we essentially had a relationship. We hooked up. We had little lesbian fights that we didn't know were lesbian fights, but they were super intense whenever we were angry with each other or like hurt. We always wanted to be around each other. And we were in a relationship. My body knew that I
Hmm.
couldn't stay away from this girl no matter what I tried. I prayed about it and I just couldn't stop wanting to be with her. I felt guilty, but my body knew it was her. She was
Hmm.
the one. My brain was completely not connected to that at all. And
Totally get that.
mine, you get like, I was like, I am going to get married to a man. That is what I have to do. So simultaneously, like to falling in love and being in this relationship with a girl, I'm going on arranged dates with this man. And the psychologists will call this denial defense mechanisms. Jennifer Freyd has really interesting research on betrayal blindness, where she discusses how you can have something right in front of you and not see it until you're ready to process that information. And so at 19, I had no money. I had no college degree. I wasn't supposed to have a college degree. I snuck out later, but I didn't have any resources. And if I were to have been with her, I would have lost my whole family, community, and essentially been homeless. And so my body was not ready to see the things that it was feeling. And so I think, I was dissociated.
Yeah. Which is so common for us, isn't it? It's so common for trauma survivors to completely separate our minds from our bodies like that. Like that didn't surprise me at all. That's been like my journey now has been all about somatic healing and feeling my feelings and feeling my body. And I for years you just intellectualize everything because you have to survive. You can't feel things. Like that's just dangerous. It's too powerful, it's too painful. So you have to just do what you need to do. And this girl is living in the same community as you. So what are you going to do? She also is going to lose her friends, family, community. Like, what are the two of you going to do as teenagers, right? Like, just leave the community and go be homeless. Like, there wasn't another option for you. And the fact that you would just shut yourself off from even thinking of it as an option is kind of a protection because it would be so painful if you were to acknowledge the fact that you're in love with her and you want to be with her and you don't want to live this life that you're being forced to live. Like that would just be too much to handle. So kind of denying the whole thing, disassociating and just moving forward the way you have to move forward in order to survive, like that completely makes sense to me.
I almost didn't even realize like fully how painful it was until, like you said, until I had done somatic healing and then my book was published and people kept commenting in reviews like, this is so heartbreaking. How are
Hmm.
you doing? Do you still miss her? And then it kind of like, it's still hitting me like, oh, that actually was really heartbreaking.
Yeah. So tell us about the I mean, I know you didn't recognize the heartbreak at the time, but there would have been obviously she couldn't be in your life as much as she was before. Suddenly there's a man in your life. You're expected to be a wife. You're expected to be a mother. You're all of these roles are put on you from society, none of them chosen for yourself. Can you tell us what it was like, your first marriage to the very ultra-Orthodox man?
Yes. So, I got essentially arranged married, right? I was set up with this man, met him a few times, and then we set a wedding date. I never touched him or was in a room alone with him until after our wedding.
Mm.
Until after, like, we stood under the canopy, in front of all of our family and friends. That's when I was alone with him for the first time. I also didn't know what it would be required of me exactly on my wedding night until
Mhm.
2 days before. So, trigger alert, this can trigger anybody who's been through any sort of assault or sexual trauma. And I won't be too graphic. If you want more, you can absolutely see it all in the book. I try to do it like kind of gently, but what happened was like about 48 hours before the wedding, I found out what it meant to have sex with a man. I had never seen a penis. I didn't even know like what that would entail. I had never seen a man's body. And I knew like I had agreed to marry this man because I didn't have much of a choice. He seemed kind enough. He had blue eyes. I like that. As I don't know, I just thought like that was cool. I might have a blue-eyed kid. I always wanted blue eyes. I was like, okay. But then when I found out what I would have to do, I was horrified and so scared. And my girlfriend came and picked me up from the little class I had with a bride teacher just right after I found out what I would have to do.
Mhm.
And this is not even in the book. Like she came to pick me up and she saw me get into the back seat of a car that neither of us were driving, and I was green. I looked like I wanted to throw up. And she wanted to come and hug me and said, "Are like, are you okay?" And I at that point was like, we need to not be together anymore. And so I didn't even allow her to hug me. I just sat there like pale and shaking. And then I was like, I'm going to go through with it. This is a sacrifice that's required of me. We've learned about sacrifices our whole lives. This is what needs to happen. And I go to the wedding, I pray the entire day. I'm like, I chose a song for walking down the aisle that is a Hebrew song that translates to, I give myself to you, God, as a sacrifice on the altar. That's what it felt like for me getting married. And it's like it is chilling to think about, and I'm very actually one of the fortunate ones because I did marry a gentle guy. And he wasn't, it could have been so much worse. So many people go through horrible abuse on that first night, but I did marry a gentle guy. I did choose that or get that chosen for me appropriately. And he was actually really shy. So it ended up being very anticlimactic because he was like, I don't really know what to do. He
Hmm.
had seen a woman's body, and it took us about like 8 days to figure out how to consummate our marriage. And we had to call the rabbi and the bride teacher, and he was like, "Well, where is this part I'm supposed to go into?" And I'm like, "I don't know how to do this either." So, you know, other than it being like uncomfortable and not something I wanted, at least it didn't come with added physical abuse.
Hmm.
And so I
Hmm.
married this man, and that was sort of the tenor of our marriage. He was uh like a little bit socially awkward. Wasn't We didn't really have anything to talk about. We were like roommates that didn't know each other very well, but occasionally had mandated sex and then had children and just around how to care for them together until I managed to sneak out, get a social work degree. Um, and I was supposed to like kind of sneak out, go to social work school, come back and just be a therapist for my community. But at school, I learned that like, oh, some people enjoy having sex. And actually, some people are queer and like gay and lesbian out in the world. I learned that women like could wear different clothing and not be evil. They could be
So
kind.
wait a minute. How were you allowed to go to college when you were still part of the Hasidic community? Because I thought girls weren't, like college was like a bad thing for girls in your
Yes.
community.
So I got special permission because firstly, I was so devout and pious that no one thought that like I would be the one to stray. And I had a sister who had bipolar disorder and had been through so many hospitalizations. And so I talked with my rabbi and I was like, I am just really passionate about this. I think our community needs more people who know how to help us. And
Hmm.
I will volunteer a tribute to like go out into the world to college to get a real education so I can come back and help other people within. And
Okay.
they did allow me to go sort of with a chaperone of another Orthodox woman who would serve as like someone to touch base on religious things with during class or between class.
Hmm. Wow, amazing. And so when you were in that class, so now you're getting access to the outside world, you're learning about these new concepts like gay, lesbian, feminism, sex, and so you're bringing these ideas, they're obviously expanding your mind, probably causing some cognitive dissonance in you. Um, did that affect your marriage?
That's Yes, I think you're really like kind of nailing it. It's like I am realizing all these things about the world. And I would come home to my husband and I was like, this is not what I thought it was. This is not healthy. This doesn't seem normal. I thought, because again, I had never really spent much time with men. I thought all men were like this, having
Mhm.
stilted conversations about the weather over dinner, and then just demanding like their mandated sex once in a while. And like that was it. But then I went to college and I saw men who were like so sweet and emotionally intuitive and could have entire conversations about philosophical topics or emotions. And so it really made me question what I was doing with this person that I didn't have any connection to.
Mhm. Tell us more about that. And so then I'm enthralled.
I mean, and then like I think for me, like what was so interesting about your book is I had a daughter, like, and I think just having a daughter when you're living as a repressed woman, you're thinking that you're fine, but your body
Mhm.
knows that you are being subjugated. Your will is being suppressed. Your body is being controlled. You can tell yourself it's fine and you're fine until you have a daughter, I think.
Mhm.
If you're somebody that really I think you're probably a similar kind of mother, to how like I had this moment where I gave birth to my second child 15 months after having my first child. It was a boy, then I had a girl. And I remember her being so tiny. She was born at 5 pounds, 11 ounces. She was
Oh,
just
wow.
a little tiny bird of a baby. And I held her, and I remember being so overwhelmed. Like my body hadn't recovered from the first birth when I was forced to get pregnant against my will again. So I was like 6 months postpartum when I got pregnant with her. I didn't want to have a second baby yet. Um, but I just loved this little girl, and I started to have nightmares. And I would wake up sweating and thinking about what someone taking her or someone attacking her, her being thrown into the back of a car in a wedding dress,
Mm,
like I was. And I just knew that if I couldn't do it for me, I was going to do something for her. I didn't want her to grow up thinking this kind of family was normal. And so that's when I started like slowly, like kind of trying to find my way out of the marriage. I didn't even think I could leave the community. That wasn't an option or my religion. But I started to plot my way out of the marriage. And by the time she was 1 year old, I was already in the process of divorce, which is like it's a battle in Orthodox Judaism to get divorced.
yeah.
I had rabbis in the system, and I did finally manage to get divorced. And then like it's just been it took about another 10 years for me to leave the community
Mhm.
after that. And I don't know if this is similar, like in your experience with women you've talked to, it's like the threat is always they will take your children. So I was allowed to get divorced once I got rabbinic permission, but then I always lived with this hanging threat that if I weren't Orthodox enough, if I didn't cover my hair, if I got tattoos, if I wore pants, if I held hands with a man that wasn't my husband, they could take my children. And it sounds incredulous. It sounds surreal.
Mhm.
These 2000s in New York and New Jersey. But the Hasidic community, because of their block voting, often has control over the court system and the legal system in New York and New Jersey. And so I had seen as a social worker, this happen to other people. They deviated, they left the religion, like lost their children. And so I didn't know exactly what I was doing. It was a very haphazard sort of strategy. It was more my gut saying, I will refuse to lose my children,
Yeah.
refuse, no matter what that takes. And so again, I didn't want to think about being gay, like didn't want to admit it because that would have been too like dissonant with being able to keep my children.
I can totally get that. I can feel young Sarah going through this. And when you say it was a haphazard strategy, there is no strategy. It's just survival. Like people ask questions like, were you happy? Like who thinks of happiness? You know what I mean? It's all about survival. It's all about safety. It's about keeping my child. That's what's important. Like you're not thinking beyond that. So there is no strategy. It's just you're reacting to whatever is in your environment that's forcing you to respond in whatever way required for you to be safe and for your children to be safe, you know? You don't have an opportunity to sit back and be like, let me vision board this, you know? Like there's no
Yeah.
manifesting, there's survival. So in those 10 years, are you co-parenting with him? And is he the threat? Like not him, but like the fact that he's still not him necessarily, but like would he be the one to take the children away from you if you deviated from the restrictions of the community?
Yes, so I had actually signed a divorce agreement that specified that. Like if I
Mm-hmm.
chose, he must have known, like he knew I went to college. And even though I barely even had a full conversation with him during our entire 4 year marriage, he knew to be worried. And
Yeah.
so he stipulated in our divorce agreement that if I were to not keep any of the commandments, 613 commandments in the Torah, and then he added like add-on books, the add-on books with extra commandments. He's like, if you don't do any of these, you will be ceding custody to the other biological parent, which is him.
Wow.
And I
Okay.
said
Yeah.
this because I didn't want to arouse suspicion. So when they
Hmm.
said, want to include this paragraph, the rabbis told me, I knew that if I were to question it, that alone would be reason for me to lose my children.
Yeah.
And so I was acted very cool. And I was like, I don't even care because I'll, I'll do, it doesn't matter.
You do what it takes. Yeah.
I signed that. And then he was the threat, and I
Hmm.
did have to worry and be careful, like that he wouldn't find out. I would drive out of like the community, out of town, miles away, and do some exploration during like a few hours of the month and like put on
Hmm.
jeans, hang out, and then drive back in and put the whole guard back on. And
Okay. Interesting. So you had to live this double life, and you knew that he was paying attention. He was watching to see if there were any signs of you, you know, breaking any of those 613, commandments, so that he would
wow.
take the kids from you. So so that sounds terrifying, but you still found ways to, I guess, go towards your freedom.
Yes, education was really my path toward freedom because eventually I did manage to do an online PhD. While
Amazing.
children were sleeping, I just knew I couldn't survive on a social work salary as a single parent. And so once I was able to get a PhD, I had power. I
Hmm.
more of an income and I knew more. I learned about like the actual court system. I knew my rights. And I knew that once my children were in middle school, if I were like, I knew that that would be the right time to take a risk.
Hmm.
So I sort of like waited and planned that. Yes.
And is that when you decided that you were ready to leave the community entirely at that point?
Yeah, I mean, incidentally, I married another man for 5 years in between. It wasn't like I used to think it's a huge part of my story, but looking back, it was the best I could do at the time. I just needed to survive. I had the children, and so I convinced myself that this was the right thing to like, that I loved him. He was another Jewish man. And I did love him. I just, as a friend, I shouldn't have married him. But he was actually helpful and very supportive of me. And when we both realized together over the course of that marriage that I was gay, he helped me
Amazing.
like stage. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. And when you decided that you wanted to leave the community, did he also help you in that?
He actually really, you see, what happened was, is like my second husband really did love me. And I knew he would look at me in this way, like I could tell how much he loved me. It was that look, like that
Hmm.
gaze. And that's how I realized I had never had that for him. That's how I
Yeah.
realized what love was and what it should be. He loved me into finding myself enough to say, this is not it. And so when I
Wow.
used to leave him and the community, he actually did help. Like he helped me find another school for my son. He like stayed in contact with the children for a little while so they wouldn't feel it was so abrupt. He put up a little fight, like it was hard for him to lose me, so he had some tantruming over there, but then he did ultimately like really help me. So I always give him credit for that.
That's wonderful. That is an exceptional human being. I'm glad that he came into your life. So, what was it like for you leaving the community? Everything you've ever known, your whole life, all of your family, all of your friends, your entire support system, your entire structure of how to live your life. Can you somehow concisely, this is a very big question, tell us about that journey of, you know, I guess figuring out rebuilding yourself brick by brick, essentially.
It's really interesting. I'm 40, I'll be 41 next week. I left the community when I was 32 years old. I did not know what kind of socks you should wear with pants. Like I
Yeah.
had to Google, what do you wear with slacks versus jeans? Because I would try to like go to the office in pants and like I was like, this is not the right thing. I would be wearing like sports socks with slacks. I was like, this, I didn't know anything. People would talk about The Simpsons or like American Idol. And I was like, I started to catch up a little bit in my 20s. I started to watch TV, but I was so at a loss at 32 that I moved to Manhattan with my children, which was like amazing, the biggest blessing. I still live in New York City. I love it. I didn't realize how lost I even was. And so what happened was that I actually like fell into 5 years of um, trying to relive my adolescence while maintaining a practice and parenting my children. And at the same time, I really struggled. Like I had like rampant PTSD, and also had a couple of years where I would go out partying in New York City and use drugs and alcohol. And I would be like snorting cocaine at a club at 2 a.m. And that I would do it like once in a while. I didn't get in the way of my children, but I would just look at myself and say, like, what this is not who I am. And eventually I realized that I was so traumatized. I didn't know like where my body was in physical space. And
Mhm.
I needed to do a lot of trauma work. So I
Mhm.
underwent EMDR therapy. I entered a 12-step program, which has been so helpful. It was very humbling because I was like, here I am, this doctor. I have it together. I look like I have a great life, and I am in a church basement with, multiple other people who have struggled, just saying, I am one of you. Like, I am
Mhm.
not okay. I need help. Uh, and through like all of that, and writing the book, what I can say today is I am still not always okay. And I think
Mhm.
it's important to say that. We think
Mhm.
that trauma is this like before and after. It's like, and like every single day I'm still finding things about myself that are insane that I do because I'm
Mhm.
traumatized. And I go into detail about some of this on my Instagram at Dr. Sarah Glass. Sometimes I'm just like, here's this crazy trauma thing I did today. And I just realized that it's because of my first marriage that I do this.
Mhm. Mhm.
I have a hard time listening when people tell me, you should read this book. I'm always like, I have a hard time. I get resistant to suggestions because in my past, whenever anyone said you should, it
Yeah.
was followed by really scary suggestions. So there's so many things about my life now where I'm still not okay. And if you have survived trauma, for anyone here, you've been through anything and you are not okay all the time, I think that's the point. To be safe enough to look at that and to laugh at yourself a little bit when you can, give yourself the space to heal.
Sarah, I absolutely love how you speak of yourself with such compassion. That has been the most difficult part of my journey, is when you look back and you hit the nail on the head when you said, I went through my adolescence at 32. Yes, you absolutely did. And like I've spoken to ex-Muslim women that use the word like feral. you know you get freedom all of a sudden, and you're coming from such a restrictive life, and now you're like viewed as an adult by society, so you have all of this access and freedom and ability to do, you have financial freedom, you can do whatever you want, but you haven't gone through your adolescence yet. You haven't learned. I mean, I remember when my daughter was 2 years old, asking her, like, do you want to wear this blue t-shirt or this pink t-shirt? Like, we didn't go through that. We didn't go through learning, what do I like? What do I want? What are my preferences? What feels good to my body? What, none of that. We were always told what to do and how to feel and how to be and what we are. And so, yeah, you're 32 physically, but mentally, you're still like 12 or even younger. You know what I mean? Like you're just discovering who you are. And it's so unfair and it's so sad, but also incredibly awe-inspiring that we have to go through that so quickly as we're being judged by society, as you were saying, like you're Dr. Sarah Glass, you've got to practice, you're a mother, like you are viewed a certain way, but internally it's almost like your own secret that you have, and you can't bypass it. You have
Yeah.
to go through the process because if you don't go through it, it's going to catch up with you, right? And so but you can't go through it in the way that a normal teenager could, where society would give them grace and be like, well, what are you going to do? They're 13, they got to figure stuff out. But you're 32. You're not given that kind of grace, right? You're a mother, you're a doctor, so you're expected to have it together. And so you have to push yourself to go through the most difficult life journey completely on, fast forward, and while you're being viewed by society as somebody who you really do not feel internally. Like it's just that whole thing that you were just describing there is just for anybody listening who's been through anything similar to that, like you can just feel that. And the fact that you are so compassionate when you talk about yourself is really so amazing and wonderful to me because I think so many of us spend a lot of time admonishing ourselves, being angry at ourselves, criticizing ourselves, and to be able to look at ourselves with compassion and grace and understand like that's where I was at that time. I did the best that I could with the knowledge that I had and with the trauma that I was overcoming and with the PTSD that I was fighting. It really makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I wasn't that kind to myself for a very long time. I've had to really think about what would I say if this were my child going through it, if it were my client going through
Yeah.
it. And that'll comprise book two. Book two will be about the mess, the messy part of healing after leaving a high control group or a traumatic situation. We don't
Oh,
talk about.
I want to read that book. I should probably write my own too, because yeah, it is quite the mess. It is, yeah, I ended unveiled with like, and she lived happily ever after.
And then,
She kind of didn't. Yeah, like you think that you've done everything. It's kind of like the outside stuff. You got the job, you got the house, you got the car, you got the stuff that people can see. And so you're like, and you think like this is now I must be okay. But you don't know what you're carrying in your mind and in your body and those things. Yeah, it's like a never-ending Pandora's box. Every time you think like, phew, got rid of that, I'm good. Then there's another one on your path. You're like, great, here we go again. So it's just, yeah, it's an ongoing process. And one that I've had to overcome resentment of, because I had a lot of resentment that the people that did this to me get to just live their lives happily, but I'm still healing from this stuff decades later. Yeah, I have to start looking at it like a privilege that I get to heal versus a lot of people are still stuck in that, high control group and they don't even know that they're not their authentic selves. They have no idea what that even means. So, despite all of this, we are the lucky ones, right? We are the free ones. We are the ones who are able to, at the end of the day, align, our lives can align with who we are, which is such a blessing. So I want to ask you about your work now. You mentioned your sister who suffered with bipolar, and I think you talked about your mom too, who also had some mental health issues. And you have now chosen, as you mentioned to us, you're a trauma-informed therapist. You've turned all of this pain into not just healing yourself, but healing others. Can you tell us a bit about this work, about what you do and the people that you help?
Yes. I direct a practice in New York City. It's called Soul Wellness NYC. And I supervise other therapists and present on topics related to trauma. I just have seen too many people go through therapies that are developed to be more shallow. Like there's initial therapy training that I received was more psychodynamic and cognitive behavioral. And research in the field of trauma has only come out really in the last like 20 to 25 years has it become popular. And so I feel like sometimes I'm like the last destination for people who've been through so many different kinds of therapies and haven't felt like they were effective, before realizing, oh, I need actually a full-on like trauma therapy experience, which should always involve the mind and body to some extent.
Hmm.
Because you can do somatic therapies, and that actually I think would be better than just doing talk therapy. Or you can just do talk therapy, but you need something that hits both in order to unblock the trauma from your mind and body. And so I use EMDR, expressive arts therapies, and somatic therapies to that end. And I have the most amazing clients who know, like, I wrote this book, and they sometimes come and find me because of my story, which is nice, and they know, like, you have been through it, the thing, so you can hold this other thing. Um, and if anyone needs therapy, like, no matter where you are in the world, if you need help, like, or in the US especially, just you can always book a consult with my practice at soulwellnessnyc.com. There's like a consult page just so we can help direct you because people get lost in the maze. We can't treat outside New York, New Jersey, but we're happy to direct you. So always feel free to find us there.
Hmm. So you can't take clients online who are in other states.
We cannot yet. I am working on my California and Florida licensure currently.
Mhm. Not Canada.
I mean, I can. My other clinicians can't. I can because um I can see clients on a consultation basis
Mhm.
that are international because I have this other role as an author.
Beautiful. Okay, great. Well, that's good news for me and for many other listeners as well. Great. Thank you, Sarah. Okay. So we're going to open it up now to questions and comments from people here. And Cindy, we'll start with you.
Hi, thank you, Sarah, for sharing. I just had a quick question about, you've mentioned your children, and I'm just wondering, I don't really have a concept how old they are exactly, but I'm just wondering, are they still connected to the Hasidic community or to family? And, are they living in that community or outside of that community?
Yeah, so they're in college. My son is at Columbia. My daughter's in College of Charleston. I'm so proud that we made it out of the community and that they get to be educated. Like, because I had to fight so hard to get educated, and that paved my path to freedom. And that they get to do this without having to fight is like beautiful. They're currently, as we speak, in Mexico with their dad for the Jewish holiday that's happening right now. And I love this about them. He knows that they're not keeping kosher and they're not like Orthodox. And he has, like I said, he was a gentle guy. He was never a bad guy, and they've managed to maintain a relationship. So I'm proud of them. I'm proud of him. And I'm glad they get to do what they want, while maintaining that.
Thank you. Oh, and Sarah just sent me a message. I guess I originally had just another quick question. I'm just curious which sect you're talking about because I know there are a number of different Hasidic sects.
So this is Ger. It's known as the coldest, like most formal sort of sect. We're not like the warm ones. They call us cultigators, the cold-hearted errors.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Cindy. Sara, you're next. Other Sara.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you, Sarah, for sharing your story. I really appreciate it. I saw this in your picture
Mm.
and it just, yeah, it spoke to me and it means a lot. It's just instantly seeing that we connect. And my question is basically about the anger, because we talk about healing, we talk about trauma. I understand what my trauma means. I understand what I need to do to heal. Where do I put the anger? Because the more I heal, the angrier I feel. And it feels dysfunctional. It's like, why am I putting myself through it? How do I deal with this anger?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, and so for people who didn't see, this is the semicolon tattoo for suicide awareness. It's, when I got that from my sister, and if you have it, you get it. If you relate to it, you get it. I think that the anger is something that is so necessary and so personal. Women, especially in this culture, have been taught to disown our anger in all cultures. We've been taught that it's dangerous. We shouldn't have it. It makes us bad people. We are allowed to be angry. We should be angry. We should be angry about what happens to us. And they don't want us angry. Patriarchy doesn't want us angry. Cultures don't want us angry, because then we speak and then we're harder to control and to silence. And so what you do with your anger is, first, I think, like, if I had to answer this on one foot, I would say you feel it. You let yourself feel it and you let yourself own it. You let yourself have it. You don't judge yourself for it. You don't try to convince yourself it shouldn't be there. You are allowed this. It's your right. And you take your time with it and you embrace it. And then you decide if there's something you want to do with it. You don't have to. People who go through difficult things, we don't have to change the world. We could go through it and then take a nap. Like, you don't
Mm.
have to do anything productive with it. You could decide that for the rest of your life, you're never talking about this again. But you'll have decided that based on having claimed the experience fully for yourself. And if it's meaningful to you to speak up, to speak out, like to be part of the change, like, you can do that too. It's not your obligation. It's, your choice.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Yasmin.
Mm-hmm. Sara, you are so speaking to me directly right now, because a lot of I went through what the other Sarah was talking about, which is that period of feeling anger and just wanting to do something about it. And like you said, wanting to change the world, save the world, all of that. And now I'm at the point where I'm just ready to take a nap. Like, yeah, it's all just a process that we're all going through in different ways.
Yeah, feel like it's like we have to remember our experience is still meaningful and it still matters, even if we then just rest.
Yeah, we are entitled to rest. Next we have Irene. Irene's got a bit of a, a more difficult question for you. Go ahead, Irene.
Hi, thanks for hosting the podcast or the Zoom. Um, I I joined late, I'm sorry, and I have a question, about trauma and what's been going on with Hamas and Israel and supposedly this new ceasefire deal or whatever the deal is supposed to be. And um, we've been in New York, that the Dyke March specifically had excluded Zionist dykes. And here in San Francisco, they only implicitly tried to keep us out, like silence us. And so if there's like really a deal that would bring the hostages home, obviously, how could we make peace back in our former supposed communities around this. I mean, even though they're still pro-jihadi, they're not doing anything against Kenya, obviously.
I think we live in a really difficult time with the moral, like sanctimonious righteousness of so many people who want to rush to get onto one side of a divide and to state their position so quickly and so loudly that, and with the advent of social media and algorithms, it leaves very little room. What I found is for nuance. It's almost like people are supposed to have picked a side. There's only one right side or something, you know. And if you don't do that fast enough, loud enough, or you disagree, it can get very dangerous out here in these streets in New York, in San Francisco, everywhere. I hope like that there is a silent majority of people who are thoughtful and who are able to engage in nuanced, intentional conversations, holding multiple perspectives, and that they are just not speaking or being heard right now because of the loudness of what's going on. You know, I'm a hopeful person, and I do hope that there will be a time when more like compassion and heart is brought into these difficult conversations and more knowledge, you know, into some of the conversations where that's lacking. But I've like for me, I've just been like my personal boundary is like I won't engage in a conversation with somebody who cannot hold complexity, you know, and if there's a space that's saying we don't want to hold like it's up to you where you feel comfortable and safe to engage in the interim. I don't know if that answers your question. I'm sorry. It's just like a
Yeah,
tough.
right. I get it.
I don't know.
I guess for me, the silent majority are like fake Buddhists who are like, oh, we're not gonna like hate on anybody, even though one side is clearly evil.
It's so demoralizing, you know, to be in conversation. Like it's just, I'm sorry. And I feel you. And especially being queer where there's added layers of isolation and marginalization on top of that.
Mhm. And if I could just add something here too, I'd like to say that maybe you don't have to heal and rebuild and forgive. Maybe you just move on and find another community. Like Sarah was saying, people that know how to hold nuance, people that recognize your humanity, and people that love you for who you are. And the others just don't, honestly, don't waste your precious energy on trying to convince them out of whatever, indoctrination they're stuck in. Just walk away.
I think you and I know how hard it is to get people to bend once they've taken an extreme stance.
Yeah.
And we are easy to say, like, I'm going to step back, I'm going to walk away, because we know how deep those grooves can.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Now we have Melissa. You're next, please.
Good evening, Yasmin. Good evening, Sarah. Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I just wanted to ask you, do you consider TRE one of those therapies to get the trauma out of your body?
Which one?
TRE, trauma release exercises, tension release exercises.
I think those can, I mean, I'm not so familiar with TRE as like a primary form of treatment, maybe more as an adjunctive form. Is that how you've seen it be?
Well, my therapist, the last therapist that I went to, that was one of the modalities that she used with me. And so it was an addition and also something that I can do on my own.
I love that. I think that you need body-focused therapies in addition. So absolutely. And especially if you can go home and do it on your own. I'm always for therapies that are like, you don't have to pay a whole ton of money for it. It's accessible. You can do it on your own, and you feel like if you feel like it's working, that's good.
The only thing you agree to is that you won't do this for someone who hasn't done it professionally. I can't go and try and show my friend how to do this because he said like something might happen and you're not trained to handle it.
Yeah, I think that's very wise.
So that was the one condition. Yes. So thank you so much for sharing your story. I appreciate it.
Good to have you.
Thank you, Melissa. So, Sarah, before we wrap up today, I just want to ask you if you have any final words of advice or wisdom or things that you want to share with us, anything that you wanted to say that you didn't have a chance to say, or maybe just let us know where we can, you told us about your website, like where we can get your support, where we can get your book, anything at all that you'd like to share with us before we wrap up.
Actually, my main question going into this was I was like so curious to know how you're doing, and I really appreciate that you like brought that into the conversation. I don't know if you get to talk about that a lot. So if there's anything like you want to say, I'm like that guest that you can say it with.
You're right. I don't get to talk about it a lot, and I'm currently in it. You know what I mean? I'm just like I'm just trying to what is it that they say? You're trying to shovel the snow in the middle of a snowstorm right now. So um, it's kind of hard to talk about it when I'm in the midst of it, but I'll tell you what really did surprise me is that this snowstorm even happened because I really did think that I had done all the things. I had gotten the degrees, I had gotten the job, I had gotten the home, I had gotten the family, I got the car, I got the this, I did all the stuff that society tells me when you've done all these things, then you're good. I wrote the book. I was translated into like 17 languages. I did all the, got the podcast, did all the things. And so you think, okay, well, this is somebody who it was almost like shameful that to discover that I really did not have it all together. Like I was I was reliving the most basic childhood wounds. Like I had just completely bypassed over everything, all of these decades that passed. I was so concerned about moving forward, progress, raising my kids, making sure they had, the right shoes, the right clothes, the right school, the right this, the right that, and did not spend an iota of time thinking about myself internally and what I was going through. And I didn't process anything. I didn't
Yeah.
process anything. I bypassed everything. And you can't, life is eventually, it's gonna get you. Like you can't bypass this stuff, right? And when it hit me, yeah, it was humiliating more than anything that like, how could I have missed that? How could I have not seen that? How could I have not known that? How could I be repeating the same patterns that I wrote about in my book, telling people, hey, be careful, don't do this, don't do that. And I was actively doing those things. And so it was, yeah, it was just really surprising to me. And now it's been a actual healing process that I'm on right now. You talked about talk therapy and somatic healing. That is exactly what I went through. I went through all the talk therapy, and it really it doesn't go deep enough for people who have been so disassociated from their bodies. I'm like a survivor of physical abuse and sexual abuse, and there were so many reasons why I had to completely separate myself from my body, and I became so good at that I forgot that the two even could be connected. Um, And as you know, it's safe to intellectualize and to figure things out. And that, my brain's always been really good to me. And so I always felt safe there. When things make sense of the world, and everything is, logical and rational. But you hit a point where there is no logic, there is no rationality, nothing makes sense, and you're forced to eventually feel it. You have to go through it. And yeah, that's where I am right now. So that's why what you spoke about really resonated with me a lot when you talked about your practice and the focus of it. I think that's something that maybe, unfortunately, a lot of people are going to be hitting up against eventually when they feel safe enough, when their body and mind feel like they're ready to handle it. But yeah, a lot of us just survive. We just survive. We just move forward and we bypass it all because there's no time for that. Who's going to sit there and think about, processing, abandonment issues when the kids need to eat and you have to go to work, you know what I mean? Like you got to pay the mortgage. Like there's no time for things like that. So, um yeah, it's just like a warning to everybody, I guess, that if you don't stop and deal with these things, they will eventually hit you when you least expect it and when you're maybe not at all prepared. So intentionally doing it is obviously the better path that I did not take.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And I think like the more we say this out loud, like people like you and I, and people know what we've been through. And if we're like, look, we look so put together, but like the more work I do, it's almost like the more I fall apart sometimes because I'm finally allowing myself to be tired and a little bit disheveled and like to not have it all together and make mistakes, real mistakes that cost and that I have to like correct. And the more we open up about it, I really think that's part of it is like that'll help other people to not do the same things that we did
Mhm.
when possible. And also, like, if you had to push forward like we did and you didn't have a break and you couldn't, like, welcome the process now. It's
Mhm.
okay. The invitation is to like not judge it and be like, yeah, this was gonna come out sometime or another. So I got here and it's coming out now. All right. It's
Yeah.
okay. Okay to
Yeah.
to not be. I don't know if there is something called as such a thing. Like I have not reached healed. Uh,
Mhm.
okay to be healing and
Mhm. Yeah, and I love that. And I think also people like you and I spent a lot of time with, spreading the compassion out there, empathizing out there with everybody else. And um, for me, a huge part of this process has been taking all of that energy and pointing that compassion, empathy towards myself for the first time in my life, which always felt selfish and weird and uncomfortable and, wrong. But yeah, that's really the most important part of the healing journey for me. But thank you so much for asking me that question, Sarah. I really appreciate it.
Glad that you answered it. I think it's going to be so important for listeners, like who always hear you just plugging forward. Listen to some of your work, and I'm like, this woman's like I don't know how she does this. So, I hope it helps people to hear like some of the human behind the powerhouse.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for having me. And you asked like what I would just say like follow me on social media at Dr. Sarah Glass on Instagram, TikTok, X, wherever you are. Just because that way like you'll get some trauma healing tips is really what I'm focusing on now, just like being human on there, giving people some ideas about trauma, and you'll get some updates about my kids and my next book as it gets written.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate you. And we will definitely keep in touch. And I hope you all follow Sarah on Instagram, pick up her book, Kissing Girls on Shabbat, and continue to follow her journey as you go on your own healing journey. So thank you all very much. Take care.